Contrasting Viewpoints with Sclafani and Mark Hurley.
Ray has been one of the leading consultants in the financial services industry for many years, and Mark has annoyed countless people throughout the wealth management industry over the last 25 years with the white papers he has written. Today, they are going to provide their insights into what is really going on in the industry, some of the more absurd things they've seen, and also for anyone in this industry, some issues they should be thinking about as they try to build their business.
Well, Mark, it's great to be back here with you once again for our monthly episode.
I'm looking forward to it. Great to see you.
Okay, we have a lot of topics to get to today, so let's jump right into it. The first that really hit the wire, that got everybody's attention, I'm going to pull out a Plan Advisor. Fidelity's data breach exposed information of 77,000 clients that the August hack did not provide direct access to users' accounting, according to a security breach filing. But in a letter to those clients, the firm explained that the hackers leveraged 2 customer accounts that they had recently established to gain access to information for a small subset of our customers. The investigation was promptly launched with assistance from external security experts, Fidelity wrote in a letter to clients posted on the Maine Attorney General's website. This got a lot of attention because while the activity was detected August 19th, it didn't get reported until October. Mark, what's your take?
Well, I mean, this has all kinds of implications. First off, it is interesting to say it was a small subset of clients because it was only 77,000 clients.
That were in the study, yeah. And 337 in Maine where it was reported, but clearly more nationally.
Well, it shows you the cleverness of these cyber criminals. If you can open 2 customer accounts and find a way to access 77,000 accounts, it shows you these guys are quite talented. The bigger issue, I think, is that the only way this became public, because Fidelity is a private company, was that Fidelity had to make a filing under Maine state law regarding this data breach. And that's what made it public 2 months later. Now, there's a bunch of rules we've talked about in prior podcasts that are pending approval from the SEC. They've said they're going to try to do it. They said October, not done yet.
That's come and gone.
Hopefully it'll be sometime soon. But I think this puts pressure on them because you're a federal regulator, one of the largest money managers, custodians on the planet that you regulate has a data breach affecting 77,000 people, and you only learn about it because a state regulator has a requirement that they have to disclose it 2 months later. Under the new rules, it's within 48 hours you got to turn yourself into the SEC, and you got to inform every client, not just the clients affected, but every client promptly.
So what do you think? You think this really puts big pressure on the federal government to do something here?
Yeah, again, working at the SEC is like being a federal judge. You have life tenure, so who knows what it does. But normally, and I was a former regulator on the banking side many years ago, you never wanted to be caught as a federal regulator, particularly for someone that really is a giant organization that you oversee, that you're not catching this stuff, and instead some state regulators catching it. And that's quite candidly what's happening with cybersecurity nationally right now. The states have been far more aggressive in implementing these rules and enforcing them. And the SEC is playing catch up. So my view, I think, is this is kind of creates a tipping point. I think this is going to push us to the top of the stack. And sometime in the next month or two, we should see the rules finalized. But then again, you never know with the SEC.
Okay, let's go to our next article that comes out of Think Advisor magazine, recently posted. And this is interesting because it really demonstrates another core tactic when you're operating in the jungle, the new world order of how financial services seems to be evolving. There's an ex-JP Morgan advisor to halt client poaching, admit arbitration, a former JP Morgan Chase & Co. private client advisor who moved to Wells Fargo & Co. agreed to temporarily stop soliciting clients from his former book worth more than $250 million while arbitration's underway. That part of it's not a big surprise. However, Gary Carruthers, who resigned in September, was sued by JP Morgan last week after he had allegedly persuaded more than 24 former clients with $24.3 million in assets under management to transfer their business to Wells Fargo. There was a consent agreement, and here's the key, which does not include an admission of liability, was approved on Monday by New York State Judge Arthur Engoron in Manhattan. The accord will remain in place until the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, issues a dispute resolution. So this is not an old tactic, but it's really demonstrating how aggressive these tactics are emerging.
Yeah, I mean, restrictive covenants have really only two purposes. Number one is to provide the ability to litigate. And as part of litigating, you slow the other person down, to be clear. But that said, there's a limited utility to that because most advisory firm clients, once you get them set up, how often do you meet with them? Once, twice a year? And so let's say this guy has a 1-year non-solicit. All right, so that means you guys have, if that person worked for you, in 12 months, you have to go build a relationship with clients that you've never really known before and somehow get them to stay with you before this thing expires, and you're going to have maybe 2 meetings with them. I mean, you're not going to become the trusted advisor in that time. The second reason why they do this is to bleed people financially. Big guys have deep pockets, and they just sue to try to slow stuff down. Now, for the average wealth management firm, that's really not practical. And this is why I emphasize, and we emphasize this in the paper, we talk about this a lot, do not rely on restrictive covenants in order to keep the people you need to keep in the jungle. The first rule is to not get eaten. So what you have to do is preemptively take steps to hang on to your best people. And it's going to be, quite candidly, through financial incentives. It's not going to be through litigation. Yes, you want to use non-competes, you want to use non-solicits. Certain states like California, good luck. But the challenge here is how do you make it financially unattractive for someone to go across the street? But this in turn forces all kinds of other issues in organizations, and it's going to be a key part of how the jungle evolves over the next 10 years.
Yeah, what got me interested in this article was, no surprise, wirehouses have been doing this from one firm to another for years. In fact, it's what set up the protocols back years ago. What's interesting for me about this article, it really signals what's beginning to happen in the independent and RIA side of the business. One of our clients has a phrase that really gets my attention, and I think it's something critical for every leader in financial services to be thinking about. And that is, it's better to build a country club than a prison. If you're using litigation and covenants to retain top talent, you're building a prison. Better off to build the country club and make it exciting and worthy for people to be a part of the firm.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. But the only challenging part of that, particularly if you say you're an aggregator, you've already bought somebody, you've already paid a whole bunch of money for these clients, and now you're waking up to realizing I'm going to have to pay a lot more to the people who stayed behind to keep the clients.
That's right.
And this has not been. No one's factored that into their formulas. And I think the really smart guys are using this. Like Marty, I don't know. I'd like to meet someone who's not suing Marty right now, okay? It's a smaller group than those that are. But he's smart. What does he care?
Okay, let's go on to our next article. Client loyalty to an advisor shifts with age. So Dynasty did an interesting study. They surveyed 1,000 clients within their firm's network. The respondents each had a minimum of $500,000 in investable assets. 41% of respondents noted that their adult children do not work with their respective financial advisor, and 34% said their children are unlikely to ever do so. Dynasty said that nearly a third of the survey respondents began working with their financial advisors in the last 4 years, and around another third within the last 9 years. This implies, I think, what you call the ticking time bomb for client retention, and introducing new advisors into relationships earlier than later is paramount to long-term success.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge here is that there's this discussion of all the wealth that's going to be transferred from one generation to the next. And we've, on prior calls, discussed this. I think it's not going to be as much as people anticipate just because people will live longer. That said, what this is suggesting is the trusted advisor relationship. If you don't take affirmative steps to make sure it becomes a trusted advisor relationship with all the family members, you're going to have a short-lived relationship with that person when they shift their wealth onto their children. And it means you need to start getting other people involved sooner, people who, say, the younger generation can relate to, et cetera. In many cases, they may have their own advisor, which is very problematic. In other words, I think the study, which involved relatively small clients, this is even more pronounced with larger clients. It suggests that this is kind of a little ticking time bomb waiting to go off for a lot of firms.
Well, okay, so let me push back just a little bit, because I hear from advisors frequently about this topic. And that is that, you get a bunch of advisors together and they talk about serving their affluent clients, their high net worth clients, and they don't necessarily want to build a whole division to work with small accounts. And in fact, most advisors admit that if you're really looking at profitability, revenue per client, revenue per advisor, and you're really thinking about how much time you spend with clients, you may have a client with $5 million to $10 million of investable assets, and they've got 3 kids. All of a sudden, the wealth gets divided up into smaller pots. Who's going to go buy the McLaren? Who's actually going to build a dynasty trust and pass some of the insurance on to the next generation? It's a long road to maintain those relationships and build that trust, even with the ultra affluent and affluent clients. So what is an advisor to do with these small accounts?
Right. I mean, I think that you're getting to this, how this business becomes more complex. The question you have to decide, though, is what is the present value of keeping those heirs and the amount of money involved versus what is the cost of altering your business to do it? Most of the industry is just going to ignore it. Absolutely just going to ignore it, partly because the current owners recognize they aren't going to be around when this problem comes to fruition.
Well, I think it's a different reason. I think it's points to this fee on asset under management issue. The advisors who don't seem to have this challenge have evolved their pricing schedule, their fee schedule with clients to include planning service, retention, some kind of a retainer for planning services where they're having family meetings. They're getting much deeper and more engaged with the families and charging for their services, as opposed to just a fee on AUM structure.
Well, this is also why trust powers are becoming widely adopted. You can now do it virtually. You don't have to set up a trust company. Because the greatest thing is to get mom and dad to put the kids' money into a trust and mom and dad not trust the kids to do something crazy with it. So they instead appoint an independent trustee and someone gets fees for that. And that tends to be their financial advisor who they know and trust.
Well, my take is we'll see far more evolution of the fee on AUM model. I don't think it's going away, but it's clear that the best advisors seem to be finding new ways to add value for clients and new ways to charge for their services. Okay, let's go to the next article. It's an op-ed coming out of CityWire, and it's really about the war for talent. Every advisor I'm talking to is not having difficulty finding new relationships and finding ways to grow the business. They're having a tough time finding clients. This article, this op-ed is really interesting. The benefits and drawbacks of a fully remote RIA. It seems to be as we push to year end, there's a greater demand by companies and teams to get their team members back in the office 5 days a week. This RIA looks at it differently. It says Geometric has organically grown revenue at a compound annual growth rate of over 40% since its inception and has never struggled to attract or retain top talent. Now, this is a firm, pushing about $1 billion in size, so it's still relatively younger in its development. But in an industry suffering from well-documented storage of talent, remote roles attract a much wider candidate pool. To put this in perspective, when Geometric posts an entry-level position, we typically receive over 100 qualified applicants and sometimes several hundred. 40% is an amazing growth rate. It's $1 billion firm.
But if you start at 200 million, you can grow 40% for a while.
Yeah, you can grow 40% for a while. But what's interesting is this team has decided, hey, let's tackle remote work by simply saying, hey, we're open for business no matter where people want to work. And there's a lot of debate about whether people should be in the office working or whether remotely working, or what does a distributed workforce look like?
Well, this company is also a harbinger of what's coming into the industry. It was started by a Harvard Business School grad, along with Dartmouth, the Tuck School of Business grad, and a Kellogg guy from Northwestern. And so you're seeing people that are fairly high-powered educational backgrounds have figured out this is a great industry to be in. There's an enormous amount of opportunity, and they're starting to build businesses. And they're very savvy. And I view this op-ed as brilliant in terms of recruiting employees, because a lot of people would sooner have their teeth drilled than have to go into the office. And my view, at least, is a lot of this need to be in the office is probably when you're earlier in your career, when you're still developing the skills and talent and judgment to work with clients. But if you're trying to recruit people that are more senior, that quite candidly can do the job very well, and you can feed them clients, or their job is to go recruit clients, you really don't need them in the office. And there are people that will make a trade just to stay remote. Imagine you live in Bergen County, for example, in New Jersey. Do you want to spend 2 hours going into New York City, even if it's only twice a week?
Yeah, those days seem to be coming to an end for many. And so thinking about this distributed workforce is got to be front and center for everybody, no doubt about it. And it's another avenue for us to think about. This is another tactic in the jungle. If you're not thinking about remote workforce, you're probably going to miss the mark and miss a whole lot of top talent. Okay, let's move on to the next. It's really not a topic. I just love the title. In investment news and in the October 7th edition, the C-suite section, the headliner is no stopping the butcher of Park Avenue. Man, I saw that, was flipping through the newspaper. I thought, getting down with Josh Brown, CEO and blog superstar, talks about his new book and the state of the RIA business. He says RIA success is apparently not stopping him. And his CNBC's halftime report, Downtown Josh Brown, he appears regularly opining on streaking stocks. His new article, in his new book, You Weren't Supposed to See That, he proudly proclaims himself as the butcher of Park Avenue, and not because as CEO of a $5 billion firm, Ritz-Holtz Wealth Management, he likes to carve up clients with outsized commissions, not by a long shot. So I don't know, he's a smart guy. Article was really catchy title.
Yeah, well, rule one, if Josh Brown writes something, you should read it. That'd be my advice to anybody who's in this industry. He is a very savvy, thoughtful guy. He and Matt Middleton created Future Proof, which is a fascinating, amazing conference. And from a pure capitalism standpoint, is utterly brilliant how they set this thing up. So, look, if Josh is sharing ideas, even if they're about his sartorial splendor, I would strongly recommend you take a look at it.
Okay, so for our favorite segment of our episodes, You Have Got to Be Kidding Me, Rich Steinmeier turns big page on Dan Arnold era at LPL with pivot promise to stop managerial dictating, not long after LPL removed RIA hurdles to custody at Fidelity, Schwab, and other rivals. Boy, Brooke really did it again in this episode in RIA Biz.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't journalism, it's editorializing. Yeah, you have to keep in mind, with certain publications in this industry, there are some very thoughtful journalists. I think, for example, Evan Simonoff, Ian Winnick. These guys are pros. They are hardcore multi-source journalists who run a really efficient business. Then there's some other publications where it's like, well, I'm not at the meetings, but let me tell you what happened, because I know. I could just assume this happened. And what happens is everything that the headlines and the stories become a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. Either it's the greatest thing ever to happen to humanity.
Total sensationalism.
Right. Or, by God, the world's coming to an end with these people. And the bad news is if you're the subject of this, 1 minute you're going to be the 15 on the good side, and the next minute, oh my God, how did they put this idiot in this job, and what happened, and what disaster he's wrought upon people. Look, it'd be better for the industry, our industry. It'd be better for journalism in general if people acted as journalists and just gave the facts and stopped editorializing. And unfortunately, this is what they're doing here.
Well, so this is reported in this article. Steinmeier oversaw an upbeat, celebratory, even festive first meeting with Wall Street analysts, delivered blockbuster results, promised to pivot away from outdated LPL management culture, and made no mention of Dan Arnold, predecessor.
Dan Arnold was there for a long time, made the investors a ton of money. They should hold a parade in his honor. And by the way, Mr. Steinmeier is doing a great job too. But everything, we got to, one of the smartest guys I met a long time ago used to say, lower highs, higher lows. It'd be great if journalism might actually figure that out too.
Okay, terrific. So let's get to the main topic. There's been, Mark, a lot of talk about this AI and how artificial intelligence is going to impact wealth management. I like the way you frame it up. It's kind of a current rage and immense hype. I happen to disagree with you on this topic. So the question is, how do we want to define artificial intelligence? How do we want to define a way forward in using technology and large language models to impact positively the outcomes of these businesses? And so I kind of want to get into this with you a little bit, because while AI is transforming wealth management by improving efficiency and personalization, this also can flag unusual changes in an industry. There are benefits, there are negatives. And I kind of want to hear your take on this and then start to disagree with you about it, because my take is there's a lot.
First.
Yeah, there's a lot more coming on this whole AI. There's really good things that are happening now.
Well, look, first off, I think AI will play a role, but it's going to play a role at least 6, 7, 8 years at the margin. And when I mean at the margin, it will take existing applications that advisors do and make them more efficient, and therefore the advisor more efficient. I use Calendly. Calendly's been around for a while. They've made it better using AI. You have Microsoft doing similar things. You can use ChatGPT the next time you need to write a paper. And there's even various online applications of AI, if you want to, that will help you, figure out, for example, I can't find a source for this. There's Perplexity AI. .ai, and it'll quickly run down sources so you don't have to plagiarize everything. You can actually correctly cite it when you're doing stuff. But again, that it's not fundamentally wealth management is about helping people manage the single most complex relationship in their lives. And that is the relationship they have with their money. Wealth managers do not give financial advice. What wealth managers do is they diagnose and solve client problems. And AI has a presumption that there's a right answer. There's not a right answer. People are very complex and they're not rational. Everyone has unique problems. And this is why it's such a phenomenal business if you're a good advisor, because you're making a very big difference in people's lives. So what I see AI playing a role in is taking some of the existing applications that are out there and helping make the advisor efficient. That's one. More efficient. Number two, we went through from 2012 to 2021 an insanity. Markets went to the moon. An average diversified portfolio net of inflation went up 10%, 11% a year, which implied that if you just turned your lights on as an advisor, your EBITDA went up 15 to 20% a year for just showing up. And that's what most of the industry did. They didn't even try to market. Could we potentially have with AI another run-up similar to what we had in the 90s with the advent of the internet? If that happens, then all bets are off because everybody just has to sit still and they're going to make a lot more money.
So I'm not going to disagree on the notion that the relationship between advisor and client, there's great value, and there's great value in impacting those folks and bringing that sense of value proposition. I don't disagree on that point, but I would not underestimate the overwhelming impact when you can read a tax return more effectively, where you can look at inefficiencies in stock portfolios or analyze a laddered bond portfolio. There are tools and technology now that are not just bringing greater efficiency to advisors, but they're actually making advice better. And advisors who are not embracing technology to make the advice better are going to be missing the mark in terms of the quality of the value proposition to the client. Do we see efficiencies in workflows and operations, protecting margins, in a rising inflationary kind of environment where the cost of building these businesses is greater? 100%. That part I agree with you for sure. And I agree with you that this notion of the relationship is really key between advisor and client. I don't know that a large language model anytime soon is going to change that. I'm with you on that piece. But I do not think that you can underestimate the value and the improvement in the quality of advice by leveraging the AI and the technology more effectively to provide a better value proposition for clients. I think you're missing that mark.
Well, and the reason why we disagree is because you're a really nice, thoughtful person. I'm a cold, cynical guy.
Stop.
And keep in mind, when you go to an advisor, it's somewhat analogous to getting onto a plane. You don't know if the pilot can fly the plane until it crashes. So yes, there are advisors that will do a better job for clients, but will it really dramatically change their businesses? No, because that's all about what the client perceives as opposed to reality. The other challenge is that when you think about the specificity of applications, the development of AI software is breathtakingly expensive. ChatGPT, Microsoft has invested $19 billion. It costs $8 billion to run it. It costs $3 billion a year to train people on this. It is so expensive when you're talking about trying to develop applications that could really revolutionize and allow wealth managers to truly distinguish their businesses. We're a long, long way from that because how do you generate a sufficient return? Problem number two. AI is based on using enormous sets of data. And right now, what you see with ChatGPT and all these other things that are out there, Meta's got its version coming out, is they're using all the data on the internet. And with that, they're doing what's called generative AI, which is effectively machine learning that can also generate content. There isn't a similar data set for wealth management. Yeah, there is, but it's a company called Schwab and a company called Fidelity has it. Now, there are a few brokerages that have collected some data and are trying to figure out what to do, but this will only be for the people that work for them. So the ability for third parties to come in and create tools that will really empower everything, where I think it winds up on is on the onboarding of clients by making it more efficient. That I could see happening, but I still think because it costs so much, until these costs come down, it's going to be a while, and I'm guessing 7 to 8 years. But
I think it's right here. I think it's in front of these advisors. Tools like Plaid, Kensho, Sentieo, AlphaSense, even tax platforms that are really useful. Tax GPT, Intuit Assist. Yeah, I get it. Fidelity and Schwab and Pershing are probably going to put billions of dollars into this AI. But advisors today should be looking for new and different ways to provide greater value to clients.
Everyone should be looking for ways to provide greater value to clients. So we agree on that point. The challenge, of course, here is that the real opportunity here is in marketing. Okay, we have this tidal wave of potential new clients coming into the industry, as we point out in the paper.
Biggest ever. There's
7.5 million more Americans between the ages of 45 and 60 than there are 60 to 75. This implies that the size in terms of numbers of clients in the industry is going to more than double in the next 10 to 15 years. And 70% of the industry is currently unconscious. If you took out away the appreciation in the market, they'd be shrinking. And the reckoning has been delayed further because the S&P's up 20% more this year. But reality is that it's only a small set of firms that actually do marketing, and there's a shortage of people to do that, and there's a tidal wave of clients. AI doesn't affect that. Now, Fidelity, for example, has Catchlight, which they've been working on for a while, and Fidelity is very innovative when it comes to technology, but what that's focused on is helping effectively improve the quality of prospecting with leads. It's basically personalizing mass prospect marketing. And I've yet to run a wealth manager that uses leads. This is a referral business. It's like you're in Mongolia and no one's speaking Mongolian. It's a very different world. So the opportunity here has to do with organic growth. It's finding the people with the right personalities. The servicing the clients already isn't that that intensely involved. If you look at the marginal operating cost of servicing a client, it's around 80%. 80. Okay, so you make it a little more efficient. You do a slightly better job, and we'll get to 85%. Is that going to change your world? Not really. What's going to change your world is figuring out how to look at clients and bring them in and have servicing teams that service them, but have people who can bring them in. And the shortage right now is finding the talent and building the brands so you can take advantage of this enormous land grab that's out there.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I want to just maybe draw attention to a headline that was a big popular headline, but maybe we can set the record straight here. It seemed to be a big deal. CEO Peter Mallouk keeping his majority stake, but taking on some minority investment from TPG, which is joining General Atlantic. I think you and I definitely share a viewpoint that creative planning is one of the finest firms, and Peter Mallouk is one of the best CEOs in the independent RIA industry. Just your quick take on this one as we wrap up.
Well, as anyone who asked me, I would say the smartest person in this industry is Peter Mallouk. The best business is creative planning. So it's unremarkable that they're taking capital. They had taken capital a long time ago from General Atlantic. My sense is they had a deal where General Atlantic would get bought out at some point. And taking advantage of the immense thing they've built and the opportunity to renegotiate a deal with no small shortage of suitors. TPG was the lead. There's a rumor there was a $15 billion valuation. Never believe the headline just because I can get you can move a lot of parts around. As I like to say, to actually figure out how the correct valuation is, you need a Ouija board. But it's an incredible firm. It's incredibly valuable. And it's unremarkable that people are lining up to put money into it.
All right. Well, Mark, we'll leave it at that. Thanks again for getting together to have this kind of chat.
Likewise. Really enjoyed it.